all the agents that were not able to attend. I got news that there was a lot of agents that couldn't attend this event. So we're just going to go ahead and do this live. There's also a lot of KW agents where we appreciate you letting us use the facilities right now to show this presentation. Right now, there's a lot of multiple offers. I actually just recently lost an offer yesterday on a 500, and well, it ended up being probably about 590 to 595. Original list price was 550. It didn't even hit the market yet. And ironically, it's already gone. And my client had made an offer for over what the seller was asking for. Again, hasn't hit the market yet, but neighbors were talking about it going on the market. There was a coming soon sign outside, which I'm still trying to debate on whether that was okay to put a coming soon sign outside. But you know, there's that Buzz Facebook page. I guess maybe it hit that. It cash offer over list. Our offer was well over list. And then another offer came in with a loan that was way over list. We're assuming it was close to 600,000. House is gone. It's already an option, only a 7-day option period. So it kind of tells you that there's sellers wanting more than what is even on the, whatever they're planning on putting the house on the market for, and they're going for it. So sometimes, obviously, when it comes to winning bids, and I've had agents argue with me about this as to whether other things really matter or not. Some people say it's just the price. I personally wouldn't sell for just price. I would want to make sure a good family is going into the house, that it's not being bought as an investment property. I would care about the price somewhat, but I think I would actually want to know who's coming to live in the neighborhood with my neighbors. So I want to make sure that they're good people. Not, you know, I'm not getting picky. I'm not going into the NAR commentary about the letters that are written and whether or not it's okay. I'm not going to go into that. That's for you guys to decide, your brokerages to decide. I know it's a big topic right now. I'm just going to go ahead and flip. Could you help me by chance? Yeah. Okay, great. We're going to go ahead and go to the next slide real quick. I'm sorry if I have to step away. I don't even have a helper here. So hold on one second. All right. So we're going to talk about accommodating the seller's needs. A lot of times the agents, they present an offer without even talking to the listing agent first and saying, you know, is there something that your seller needs in regards to maybe a leaseback situation, or are they looking for a situation where, let's say they're a veteran, the owners are veterans, they might need a couple days leaseback to get rid of their veteran status on the first house that they're selling and then go into the next house that they're purchasing. A lot of times you need about 40 hours to do that, which would be a 2-day leaseback. Obviously, you wouldn't know that unless you talk to the listing agent. So what I've actually said is the preferred timeline is extremely important. If someone's approved with, let's say, Compass, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Chase, a lot of times you as agents know how long those transactions are taking. A lot of people are asking me right now with the DARES, which is the disaster area inspection reports that are being required by the appraisers, that they just lost a week with the electrical outages and so forth for that entire week. That entire week was a complete, let's just call it a write-off for everybody. I mean, everybody pretty much took that week off for one reason or another. If they had electricity, they had people at their home. They didn't have electricity, they were heading to someone else's home to stay, or they were huddled in and they just didn't have any computers or internet to work from. So accommodating the seller's needs right now, we have to be careful about saying we can do deals in 2 or 3 weeks because the appraisals might not be coming in that time frame. But what I have been saying is we can definitely do less than 30 days. We're not pushing 45 or 60 days right now. The refinance market is starting to dry up. It hasn't completely dried up with the interest rates increasing above 3%, as I'm sure all of you are aware already. But with the rates going up, the refis are going to start tapering down. The loan companies and the appraisers are going to start having a little bit more time on their hands because a lot of them have staffed up, even with trainees. And of course, I hear a lot of complaints about appraisals right now. Well, guess what? That's what happens when you have to hire a bunch of trainees, train them really quickly. They have no experience whatsoever. So we have a ton of trainees that are out there doing appraisals that probably should have been with journeymen or with appraisers, like appraisal leads, before they went out and did appraisals by themselves. You guys are seeing the results of that. Luckily, appraisals can be reviewed. They can there's a recert of value that you can actually send over to as an agent. You can send that over to your lender if for some reason a value comes in low and you've got other comps that you feel they didn't use on the appraisal. But all that to be said, appraisers are taking longer. So with appraisals taking longer, it's going to elongate the time frame, but not to like the time frame you saw when the refi boom was hitting and people were taking 75 to 90 days to close a transaction. So if you can offer a lower time frame for the seller, that's going to help. The additional moving days, I just mentioned that. And then of course, closing costs. You know, there's this debate of what's going on in Austin and San Antonio and Dallas. And I'll be honest with you, Right now, the buyer is paying for almost all closing costs. I'm talking the title fees, the home warranty, like pretty much a buyer is not asking the seller to pay anything. And that's usually the case before they start even going up and above the list price or the price of the home. The other thing, we'll go ahead and go to the next one, which is the letter. I'll tell you real quick what the letter is. Some people argue with me about whether or not the letter, sorry, hold on. Some people argue with me about whether this is legal or if it's ethical and whether brokers are going to allow this letter to be done. I think it's important as a fan. If I was buying a house and I knew I was in it with 15 other families, I'd want the seller to know who I am, who my family is. That's just me. I'm not here to get into semantics of, demographics of who's on the letter and whether or not the seller's going to pick that person because their demographic matches their demographic. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that depending upon what your broker's decisions are for the brokerage in regards to E&O insurance, my suggestion is to write a letter. I will give you guys an example of something that happened for us up in Dallas. We had a client who's doing a VA. She's current military. She's given me permission to share this story with you. She's current military. She's got 2 boys. She's a single mom. She's in the military. So she actually sent a copy of a picture of her in her blues, a picture of her in her camo coming right out of a helicopter with a gun that was twice the size of her, with a big smile on her face to express who she is, like she's current military. She wrote a story about her being a single mom with 2 boys, how she'd gone through about 15 offers before this, and finally decided that she really wanted the seller to know who was coming into the house and why she wanted that house and why it was important for her family. I'll be honest with you, with VA, it was very tough with multiple offer situation because of the way agents sometimes look at multiple offers and they say, well, we've got 3 conventional, we got 2 cash, we got 1 VA and 2 FHA. A lot of times people take the government loans and just throw them in the trash. Here's what I'll say, and I'll say this in a second about what the lender needs to tell the listing agent, which actually a couple of you on here, I've used this for your clients before. So I saw who was on here. Phyllis Clark was on here. I've seen Karen on here as well. I've used this in my listing agent discussion, and I'm hoping it helped win the transaction. Just yesterday, I talked to Shannon Araya. She's out of this office, this KW office, and she texted me back and I said, did my call to the agent work? And she says, I think it's what sealed the deal, which is awesome. I'm glad that helped her. But obviously the offer is important as well. But the letter tells the seller who is buying the house, like in regards to why that person wants to be in the house, why it's just, they're not going to bounce out of inspections. If they want the house that bad versus an investor that comes along and wants the house that bad, a lot of times a letter says, I'm going to owner occupy the residency. I'm going to care for this home and I want this house extremely bad. When an investor comes along, we don't know if that investor's made 4 or 5 offers on 4 or 5 different homes. If the repairs are too big, that they're just going to be measuring numbers and how much it's going to cost them to get out of that transaction. And they might just go ahead and throw 4 option fees out there, 4 contracts, and see which one of the numbers comes back. So it does tell a story when an owner-occupied person says, this is why I want the house, versus a non-owner-occupied that writes no letter, maybe offers $1,000 over list price, and maybe the numbers are exactly the same. I mean, honestly, I would want to go with the person I know is going to follow through with the transaction versus the one that might not follow through because repairs might be too much. And I, as a seller, would know that because I know exactly what repairs are required in the home. So we're going to jump to the next slide. We'll ask questions here in a second. So if you have more questions about this, I'm leaving plenty of room for questions. This is number 2. So we're going to jump to number 3. The warm fuzzy call. This is the most important number, okay? Many of you as agents, I see you guys on Zoom, you've experienced my warm fuzzy call. I've actually had agents call me and say, Michael, can you go and do the warm fuzzy call? That's what I call it. So this is my call to the listing agent. I'm not saying I have to be your lender for this to work. What you have to do is schedule with a meeting with your lender to tell them exactly what you want them to say in regards to themselves, their company, and more importantly, more information about the client. There's only so much information they can release about the client without the client's permission. There is some information that with client's permission, they could release. You guys need to realize that there's a promulgated approval letter form that we all have to use in the state of Texas. It doesn't give as much information as you would hope it would give. You'd hope it'd give a lot more information, and it doesn't. So the lender call is really critical to that situation. So here's what my lender call is like. I'm kind of glad a live person walked in here because now I feel like I can talk to somebody. All right, so talking to a camera, it's so interesting to do that. Right. All right, so here's what I say. So let's say you're the listing agent. I see Karen on here. So I'm going to say, hey, Karen, it's Michael Harrington. I see that you have a listing at 123 Easy Street. And I'm just calling you to let you know that my buyer just made an offer on your house I think the offer just hit your desk, correct? And you would say, yes, I just see it coming across. Great, well, I'm the lender working with the client, and I just want to tell you a little bit about the company, myself, and the client, so you have more information to take back to your seller, and that you feel more secure in maybe possibly our offer over other offers where you might not be getting a call from the lender, you might not be able to get a hold of the lender, and that could make a difference in your seller's decision. Would that be okay? You're going to say, sure. You're going to nod your head, right, Karen? You're nodding your head. All right. So I tell Karen about the company. I would say something like, our company is the #1 purchase lender in the nation. That means we handle more purchases than any other company in the nation. We are one of the top lenders that has the highest amount of top producers. And the reason why I feel like that's the case is because we don't let a lot of deals fall through the cracks. Does that make sense? You would say yes. So you always have to ask the question and make sure they're participating. Then I might talk about myself. I say, hey, it's Michael Harrington. I'm Michael Harrington. I'm one of the top rated loan officers in the Katy region. I was voted #1 in Houston by Houston Agent Magazine. Not to brag, but I feel like this is a bragging session. I have to tell you as much as I can about myself. So I apologize if this sounds bragatory. I just want to make sure you have as much information for your seller as possible. If you look my name up and the company's name up on Google, you'll see that we have more than 50 reviews, all positive reviews, all five-star reviews, which with Google is important, right? Because it's not Zillow, it's not JD Power and Associates, where people can pay for those types of stars on their sheet. So, and then I go into the client. So I tell them about the company, I tell them about myself, and I go straight into the client. I might say something, again, with buyer's permission. I might say something like, look, this client has higher than a 750 or higher than an 800 FICO score. They've got plenty of cash, meaning that they've got more money than a down payment that they're putting down. So if there was a disparity between the appraised value and the sales price, they could actually come up with a difference. I'm not here to debate that. I'm not here to negotiate that. I'm just telling you that if the situation occurred and the buyer decided to pay more, then they would be able to pay more in that case. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. Great. Awesome. And just so you know, there's no contingency. They can afford both their house payments, the one that they're coming from in another state, as well as the one that they're going to. Also, the jobs that they have are not going to be affected by COVID. I know that's important right now to understand which jobs are or are not going to be affected by COVID. They're not going to be on furlough. They said that their jobs are extremely secure in today's marketplace. They're going to keep their jobs, their salary, not self-employed. We're not waiting for tax returns or profit and loss statements. Hopefully that's important to your seller as well. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the client so that they know more information than what's on the promulgated form. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So the listing agent's then going to feel, great, that's awesome. And then I'm going to offer just, hey, we're going to keep you updated throughout the whole process. You'll receive text messages. You'll get a Thursday update from my assistant in regards to where the transaction's at. You're never going to feel like you're in the dark. Obviously, that's important to you as an agent. There we go. So jumping to the next one is the appraisal waiver form. Okay, so this form I've just recently seen in Houston, but if I was going to be honest with you, all my Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas deals, they all have this form on there. It's appraisal waiver form. Checkbox 1 is where the buyer is literally saying, I don't care what it appraises for. I'm going to come up with a difference. I'm not going to cancel a transaction out with the TPFA or the third-party financing addendum, allowing me to walk away from the transaction in that case. Now, some people have asked me in the last couple of days, well, what about FHA and VA? I thought it had to appraise because of that HUD addendum form that they have to sign. That's not what it says. It says that if it doesn't appraise, then the buyer doesn't have to buy the home, that they can go back to the negotiations table. This appraisal waiver form allows you to then waive that on your TPFA, whether it's FHA or conventional or VA, and they would have to pay the difference because the appraisal waiver form does supersede that commentary. Now, I've checked with HUD to see if that can be the case. Everyone always goes back to the negotiations table to try and get the money back from the seller. But what this is doing is it's taking out the TPFA verbiage. That's all it's doing. It's basically removing the verbiage that states that the buyer can walk away from the home in the case that it doesn't appraise. This is telling the seller, hey, whether it appraises for 5,000 under, 10,000 under, because I've offered over list or I've offered list and the list is too high versus the appraised value, I'm going to pay the difference. You're going to see a lot more of these forms as listing agents hitting your desk to try and beat out other offers that are on the table. The appraisal waiver form is being used on almost every transaction right now in Austin. I guess if you guys have been talking to people from Austin, Dallas, here's how I'd rank things right now, because Houston's actually at the bottom of the multiple offer scenario. I would say Austin's #1, Dallas is #2, San Antonio, believe it or not, is #3, and we're #4. So we actually haven't been hit as bad with multiple offers as what we've seen in Dallas and Austin. Austin is pretty insane right now. 25 to 30 offers per transaction is very common. People are actually creating grids like Excel sheets to try and put that information in front of the seller. Unfortunately, when you start putting grids together for 25 offers, I'm not going to lie, the letters that I mentioned from the clients or from the borrowers are not seen as much because, again, now they're just looking at numbers. So if you're a listing agent, I would love for y'all to start putting that information in front of the list or the sellers. But I understand a lot of times it does come down to just straight numbers. All right, the next one, I'm going to hit the button real quick. Turning silver into gold. So we have 3 backup offers right now, right this second, on actually some higher priced properties. Everything's over $500,000. The reason why we put in a backup offer is because sometimes during the transaction, some of these houses are being purchased sight unseen from people from out of state because they're told they have to put an offer in now just to lock it in. And then they come and view the property, and then it just doesn't fit their family, doesn't fit their mold. And then they pull out, and the only thing they lost was the option fee. So we are putting some backup offers in. But when you're doing a backup offer, make sure you're communicating extremely well with the seller, with the listing agent, because if you're not communicating with them enough, they might start picking another backup. They might have 3 or 4. You don't know how many different backup people they might want to work with. Try to become familiar with the agent, be complimentary of the agent. Let's all get along. Like, don't ever, be rude or commentary about, well, why did your seller take that offer? I mean, can't you tell me now that it's sold? Like, how much more are we talking here? And again, they can't tell you until the transaction is sold. They're not supposed to tell you until the transaction is sold. But here's the thing, just stay nice, stay in contact. Don't bug the crap out of them. Don't call them every two hours saying, has your buyer fallen through? Has your buyer fallen through? You will also know based on what option time frame they give you, what option time the seller is looking to get. The seller might be looking for a 7-day option like the one I just mentioned earlier. We know it's a 7-day option. It wasn't 14 or 10, it was 7, which tells me because it was so short, I'm not so sure the seller wanted that. I almost want to say the buyer wanted that because they thought they would get stuff done in a certain amount of time, and they want to be able to pull out in that short amount of time. So it's good for us to stay on it for 7 days. I had them locked in as of Sunday night. As you know, rates are on the rise, so we locked it in anyways. We kept the lock, even though we don't have a fully executed contract. We're going to wait 5 to 7 days and see if we do have a transaction coming, because again, there's only 3 offers on this house before it hit the market. And we believe that by being in second place, it might be a good option. So second place is not so bad if you know you're in second place. So try and talk to the agent, still stay in touch with the agent. If you know that the deal won, that yours was close, and a lot of times agents will slip and say, yeah, yours would have been picked if it wasn't for this one. Now you know you're in second place.